near-death experiences. Well, they have thousands of anecdotes of people who had all kinds of experiences while under general anesthesia, during operations and during other medical procedures where they were basically completely unconscious of their body. So, no, spiritual awareness is eternal. Consciousness is eternal. The question is, consciousness of what? If our consciousness is so strongly identified with the body that, for example, during sleep, we completely lose consciousness, and during deep sleep there's just nothing, like blackness. Actually, we're conscious the whole time. But without any sense input, because we become detached from the senses, detached from the mind. See, at first when you go to sleep, you become detached from the senses, but you're still in the mind. That's why you have dreams. Dreams are the mind functioning without input from the senses. But then there's a deeper stage of sleep called sushupti. In sushupti sleep, then we become detached even from the mind. But without any input, without any phenomenon to be aware of, it's like time, there's no way for us to measure time. So even though the time actually passes while we're in deep sleep, we have no way to measure it, so it seems like no time at all. You need to read about people who are in sensory deprivation tanks and stuff like that. They lose the ability to measure time. They think that a few minutes have gone by, but it's actually been several hours. Because there's no motion. There's no change. It's just blank. So how do you measure anything? How do you think of, well, time is like, well, this happened, and then this happened, and then something else happened, and then this other thing. So without those changes, without those events, there's no way to measure time. And time, we'll see, if we study the nature of consciousness, we'll find that time and consciousness are inextricably linked. The time passing when you're watching a favorite movie, let's say, is very different from the time when you're in the dentist chair. Isn't it? So time and consciousness are really, really tied together very tightly. And you can't say that, well, 30 seconds of watching a movie are exactly equivalent to 30 seconds of being in the dentist chair. They're not. And everybody knows this. But still they believe, again, that word belief, they believe, the nonsense scientists, that, oh, this 30 seconds and that 30 seconds are exactly equivalent. But we know from our experience that they're not. Which is more true? The belief that time is just a linear sequence of identical units? Or the actual experience that we have good times, bad times, fast times, slow times, sometimes we're asleep and it seems like nothing is happening and there's no time at all. And then at other times, like in the middle of an accident, time seems to run very, very slowly because there's so much happening. Actually, there's that much happening all the time. But since we put 90% of our experience in a garbage can, and we don't measure it, we're not aware of that time passing. Time seems to pass at what we think of as a normal rate. But for a kitten or a bird, the same time passes much more slowly. Why? Because they are aware of every single impression, every single experience in that moment. The same awareness happens during an extreme event like an accident. And that's why events that seem to slow down. And that everything is happening very slowly. But you still can't change what's happening. Because our bodies have a certain tempo of responding. So anyway, time is subjective and it depends on consciousness. And when you sit down and you actually look at your consciousness, you start to see all these things. So which is more important? Some artificial idea of the scientists or our actual experience? Just like we were talking yesterday about the grid. Humans tend to impose this square grid on everything. You know, they take a nice piece of land and then they build all these streets that are in a grid pattern. Why? Because we have this artificial construct called Cartesian coordinates, where everything is at a right angle. Length, width, height. Right angle. Right? And so then we try to measure everything according to those coordinates. But there's nothing in this world that's at a right angle. Everything is like, in nature, there's nothing straight. There's nothing at a right angle. There's nothing cubical in nature at all. It's just simply an intellectual construct that we impose on the reality. And there have been many cultures, especially native cultures, that built buildings, for example, without any straight lines at all. I happen to really like buildings like that, by the way. Especially buildings that are built up from earth and mud and stuff like that. Then you can build them in any shape you want. They don't have to be square. They don't have to be straight. You know. So nature has one kind of form, and our minds have a different kind of form. And so wherever people go, they try to impose this Cartesian idealist coordinate system on everything around them. And so that makes human settlements look extraordinarily ugly, you know, at least in my mind. That they build everything square and straight. And I think that's ugly. If you've ever seen, one time I was in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. And in this place, nothing is straight, nothing is square. They all build stuff out of mud. In fact, when we first landed in the airplane, I thought, where the heck are we? We're in the middle of nowhere. Because I couldn't even see the buildings because they were the exact same color as the soil. In fact, the buildings were made of the soil. So they look exactly the same, and they're all rounded, and they have, you know, beautiful, like, round windows, and I mean, it was so cool, you know. It was like being on another planet. You know, a planet that I happen to like, although I didn't get much chance. I wasn't there very long. I didn't get to see it, but you see, there's not only one way of looking at reality. There are many different ways. So if we read the Vedas and we look through the eyes of the Vedas, this is called Shastra Chakshush. It means one who looks through the eyes of the scripture. Then the world that we see is a very different place from the world of materialism. It all depends on the quality of our consciousness. That's to wrap this up, you know. That when we look with materialistic vision, we see one thing. Well, when we look from the platform of pure consciousness, we see a whole different thing. And when we look from the eyes of love of Godhead, then we see yet something completely different. You know, so the way the world appears depends on how we look at it. To put it in scientific language, the universal quantum function collapses according to the way that we observe it. So what you look for is what you get, see? And, well, what do we want to get? We want to get the highest state of consciousness that's possible for us to experience. So we study this love of God. Because love of God is the highest thing. It's the source of the potency of all spiritual paths, directly or indirectly. And so love of God, Krishna consciousness, is the goal.
Question from Ronald. Babaji, please accept my humble obeisances. Are you going to present the Bhakta degree program we are being offered currently in the university program?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're going to do. First of all, we're going to have a MBA program in higher educational administration, which is being put together by one of our students, Indira. That's our door opener. That gets us in the door, that gets us talking with these people on a professional level. It gets us speaking engagements, and it gets us, some credibility. And then, once we're there and talking with the people, we'll find the people who have a little more intelligence, and we'll talk to them about the real program that we want to do. And basically what we want to do is give them a new game, give them a new product, give them a way to keep the doors open after, the end of this year. Because things are going to change so profoundly in the economic sphere that basically, right